The topics I would like to cover today include the background and the need for signal management, the sections of the Module 9, the definitions of signal management, and the work sharing for data monitoring in ultravigilance, which is applicable for the European Medicines Agency and the national competent authorities, the periodicity of this monitoring, the obligations of the marketing authorizations holders, the role of the Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee, the PRAC, the tracking of the steps, and the improvement which we think the new process will bring. As an introduction, let us remind that almost 5% of all hospital admissions are due to an adverse drug reactions. 5% of all hospital patients suffer of an adverse drug reactions. They are the fifth most common cause of hospital death. It is estimated that almost 200,000 deaths per year in the European Union are caused by IDRs, and the total cost to society of ADRs in the EU is around 80 billion. Therefore, even small improvement in the pharmacovigilance system will have a major impact on public health and society. The sections of the module include, as for all the other modules, the introductions with the definitions of signal and its management. Section B, which provides general guidance and requirements on structures and processes. This includes data sources, the methodology, the steps applicable to all organizations involved, and Section C, which specifically describe on how these processes and structures are applied in the EU regulatory and pharmacovigilance network to detect new or changed risk related to medicinal products. It also covers the roles and responsibilities, interactions between the marketing authorization holders, the NCAs, including the lead and co-lead member states, which we will define later, the agency, and the role of the PRAC. Defining a signal, the definition comes from the SIOM's Working Group 8, and signal is information that arises from one or multiple sources, including observations and experiments, which suggest a new, potentially causal association or a new aspect of a known association between an intervention and an event or set of related events, either adverse or beneficial, that is judged to be sufficient likelihood to justify verificatory action. And for the purpose of the module, only adverse reactions are followed. The management of signals is a set of activities to determine based on various data sources. This include ICSRs collected in ultravigilance, for example, national databases, company-specific data from active surveillance system or studies, literature, and other available, whether there are new change risk related to active substances medicinal products. And the steps are as follows: the detection, the validation and confirmation, the prioritization, analysis and assessment, recommendation for action, and exchange of information. Speaking about signal detection, it is usually performed by reviewing of ICSRs, which is applicable for small data sets, or by statistical analysis. We will see an example of data output from ultravigilance on next slide, which is applicable for large databases using, for example, predefined criteria of frequency, severity, clinical importance, novelty. It can be also performed by the combination of both, which is used here at the EMEA. It is also a periodic basis. On this slide, we can see a reaction monitoring report for products from ultravigilance, where the reactions are structured in a MedRAC hierarchy, starting from the higher level term to preferred term, and moving to the right-hand side, we see the division of cases from severity to geographical origin, the total number of cases. Then we see the PRR, the measure of disproportionality in ultravigilance. And then at the end of the right-hand side, we see the number of cases from clinical trials, pediatric and total pediatric. The second step of signal management includes the validation, which should should be based on the clinical relevance, including the strength of the evidence, the number of reports, the presence of temporal association, the plausible mechanism, the presence of D and re-challenge, confounders, the severity, novelty, possible drug and drug interactions, special populations in which the reaction occurs. When validating a signal, previous awareness should be taken into account, whether the signal is already included in the summary of product characteristics or assessed in the PSUR risk management plan discussed by scientific committee. In principle, only new information is a signal unless reports of no risk but suggestive of higher frequency, severity, and persistence occurs. Also, other relevant data sources of information should be consulted, including literature, experiment, and finding, comparing with larger data sets, for example, national versus Ultravigilance data. And finally, a signal becomes validated if the verificatory process of all relevant documentations is suggestive of a new causal association or a new aspect of non-association and therefore justifies further assessment. This is again a summary slide of what we are doing here at the European Medicines Agency. The data are coming from Ultravigilance. We received a statistical output, which is called reaction monitoring report, where individual validator, assessor are checking the number of cases, the value of the PRR, the labeling, the previous reviews. They compare with the we compare with the SPC product informations. And after reviewing on a periodic basis, we generate a list of new signals, which then in which then we identify true cases, cases with good documentation of data. Some level of clinical assessment is provided, and then towards the end of the process, a report with a proposed action is drafted, which is then brought to the signal validation meeting, where we are deciding on the decision of the signal. So either it is closed, where the documentation available is not sufficient, and there is no association between the reaction and the medicinal products. If the information is not sufficient yet, we decide that the signal is further monitored, or if we think that the signal is already validated, strong enough, we contact the rapporteurs, relevant rapporteurs, and this is also tracked in EPID. This process will be changed with the new legislation slightly. So the signal management steps go further into prioritization, analysis, and assessment, where impact on patients, severity, reversibility, consequences of treatment are taken into account, the important public health impact, the effect of benefit-risk balance, the pharmacological, medical, and epidemiological assessment, the strength and limitations or data use for signal generation, need for additional data, the use of internationally agreed definitions of the concern, and the therapeutic or system organ class. And finally, after going through all the possible scenarios, there is the recommendation for action is issued by the competent authorities, which might include additional information which needs to be provided ad hoc or included in the routine PSUR monitoring. There might be a need for risk minimization activities, and then if conclusion is based on limited evidence, there might be a need to conduct post-authorization safety study. And finally, exchange of information, which is the latest step of the signal management between competent authorities, marketing authorization holder, and other parties, which should facilitate the data sharing on signals, the collection of additional data, the need for further evaluation, and facilitate the decision taking. This is a slide with presents us with the new process after the new pharma legislation is implemented, where we have all the steps listed and the involved parties. So the detection of signals should be performed by the EMEA, the national competent authorities, including appointed lead or co-lead member states, and by the marketing authorization holders, obviously the signal should be validated and confirmed, whereas the marketing authorization holder will be obliged to send their validated signals to the responsible competent authority. The validated signals are to be tracked in the European Pharmacovigilance Issues Tracking Tool, APIT, which is accessible to regulators. Then the prioritizations, analysis, and assessment will be done at the level of the PRAC. A PRAC will decide and will provide an assessment of a signal, which will be then the recommendation will be then transferred to the CHMP and CMDH for the products which are authorized with which are non-caps, and then the European Commission and the national competent authorities for non-caps will make a decision on the signal. The new process in the new legislation is the work sharing of data monitoring between the EMEA and the NCAs. So EMEA will publish a list of substances authorized in the European Union with the authority responsible for the EV data monitoring. The principle of work sharing is that EMEA will monitor substances with at least one medicinal product authorized in accordance with Regulation 726/2004 in collaboration with the PRAC rapporteur. Member states may agree to appoint a lead member states for the substances authorized in accordance with Directive 2001/83/EC. They will appoint a lead member states, which might be and may also agree to appoint a co-leader. And for the appointment of lead and co-lead member state, consideration should be given whether the member state is responsible for the PSUR assessment or is acting as a reference member state. Regarding periodicity of data monitoring, the baseline frequency would be once monthly. This includes the generating of statistical output and reviewing of statistical outputs. There will be a 2-week frequency for medicinal products subject to additional monitoring. The GVP Module 10 will describe the details of this additional monitoring and is to be published in the second wave of the modules. And also the 2-week frequency will be applicable for other medicinal products with need for additional information. There is also more frequent than above frequency foreseen only for specific situations like pandemics or targeted safety issues, and this will be performed by means of dedicated EVDAS queries. What are the obligations of the marketing authorizations holder? They shall monitor all available data for signals, including emerging data, and perform worldwide signal detection activities. They also shall monitor the data in ultravigilance, but to the extent and accessibility, broader access is planned in future 2015. The frequency at least once monthly and proportionate to the identify and potential risk or need of additional information. The companies shall also validate signals they have detected and shall forthwith inform the EMEA or relevant NCA as per the published list about their validated signals. And practically, there will be a dedicated email to collect validated signals on the site of the regulators. The company should collaborate with the PRAC for the assessment of the signals by providing additional information upon request. In general, they should have an established signal management process, including steps from detection to validation, and should communicate their validated signals to the responsible authority. And the role of the new committee, the PRAC, this will include to prioritize validated signals for further assessment, to nominate a rapporteur for the assessment of signals, to transmit its recommendations to the CHMP or CMDH, depending on the authorization procedure of the product, to perform a regular review of a signal management methodology and publish recommendations, to review the list of medical events that has to be taken into account for the detection of a signal before their publication by the agency. All the steps which we presented, they should be tracked, and EMEA and CA should keep an audit trail of their signal management activities. Relevant queries and outcomes includes outcomes of signal validation, On all validated and confirmed signals should be entered in EPID by EMEA or NCA, which the EPID is administered by the agency. And all subsequent evaluations, timelines, decisions, actions, plans, reporting needs to be also tracked in EPID. Marketing authorization holders should also keep an audit trail of their signal management activities. The improvements which the new process will bring, that there will be transparent roles and responsibilities. There will be a public list of EU substances with the regulator responsible for monitoring of data in EV and responsible for confirming validated signals from the MAHs. There will be work and signal sharing for all EU substances. The signal sharing in EU through mandatory EPID population with validated and confirmed signals. The PRAC expertise valid for the assessment of all validated signals related to EU substances irrespective of their authorization procedure. And the conclusions of signal assessment by the PRAC will be in public domain. So thank you.